Good morning. Welcome to Gators and Golf with Tony Aguilini. Tony, how the hell are you this morning, my friend?
Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. The Braves are on a roll and the Mets are not. So
Yes.
things are looking.
Yeah, they are. Mets are tanking and Braves are playing well. And I was talking to a coworker yesterday. It sounds like the Braves' next 15 to 20 games are right up the wheelhouse for maybe even going into first and extending the lead.
They're going to, well, I'll put it to you this way. If they stub their toe and kind of muddle around, it gets much, much more difficult after that. So this is the part of the schedule where the Mets are going to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Phillies have gotten hot, so I don't know if the Braves will be in first, but they've got to play well over the next 15 games because the Braves have opportunity to make up some ground. The Mets are going to be playing an incredibly tough road and home foes. It's their turn to play out west. Once they're done, it's time for the Braves to go out west. So they're going to kind of flip flop. So we'll see how all the dust settles, but we should know pretty much where that division stands within the next 30 days. I think is the big deal. Outside of the world of baseball, let's get into the world of football because the SEC. Okay, first of all, do you believe that they're done expanding, or do you think there's more to come with this?
I think for this, I think for 2021 and this summer, I think it's done. I think I also think there's going to be another year next year where I think it's status quo, and then I think in 2023. I think you might see some more changes. I think some other dominoes have to fall, like, what happens with Kansas and Kansas State, kind of like what we talked about last week before we get into like FSU and Clemson and some of the stuff that's more SEC centric. So I think that's the only kind of thing that I'm waiting on. And I think that's going to take a little bit more time, maybe. Because, I mean, when Sankey spoke at Media Days a couple weeks ago, and then kind of spoke afterwards about when Texas and OU joined, he mentioned it's been in the process for like 6 to 8 months and nobody really even knew about it. I mean, that story never even broke till day 3 of Media Days. So I think there's going to be more of that just with the other conferences.
Yeah, in this day and age, it's really hard to believe that none of that really was
crazy
sniffed out by anybody. That just tells you that there were old school guys that were involved in those conversations. That's it. There wasn't a single guy that was involved in that little circle that was worried about helping their Twitter handle, right? So that's pretty much the only way you can do it nowadays. I think every guy's got to be over the age of 60 for it to even have a chance of working. Because if not, someone's going to have a couple of cocktails and go, guess what? Guess what? You don't know.
Yeah, and it's funny. That's probably why it happened over the summer and not like in October after you get like, some of these bowl representatives that are making $600K and going from game to game in the season trying to quote sell their bowl game to these programs, and they're kind of just going to go out of hand and have a few cocktails. Like you said, you give some of those guys one too many, and the whole world's going to know where Kansas is going next. So but yeah, I do think there's more to come. It's just a matter of when, I think, but I do think it's going to take a little while. Just kind of sort some other things out. This whole Pac-10, Big Ten thing's going to need to sort out too.
All right, so ESPN came out with their, I guess it was really power rankings.
Yeah,
is what they did, but it's still interesting because you get guys who are following the sport that are basically calling their shot, and I find it interesting what we're looking at today. Because you have 6 teams in the SEC, which by the way, I was surprised by that number because that's pretty low for the SEC. Normally, that's 8 to 10 that start off in the preseason. So that tells you that there's a lot of rebuilding going on in the conference itself. Alabama being number 1 doesn't shock anybody. No. Georgia being in the top 5 doesn't shock anybody. What are they, 4th?
Yeah.
But I think the one that'll surprise people because they lost Kellen Mond is Texas A&M at number 6. So specifically, and then we'll get to the Gators and everyone else, but specifically those 3 teams sitting there in the top 6. What say you on that? Because we're actually doing Texas A&M today on the Wake Up Y'all show, and I'm intrigued by Texas A&M this year because Jimbo Fisher was brought in there to build a program, not just to make one good run last year and it's over.
Right.
But I've never been that impressed by Kellen Mond, but they did lose him, right? So what say you on what Texas A&M and then of course Georgia with JT Daniels, and then we all know Alabama's a football factory.
Right. Yeah, I think with A&M, I think it almost reminds me of back in like the mid 2000s or so when Arkansas had Matt Jones, who eventually ended up with the Jaguars. He was a pretty good college quarterback, but he tried to take his team on his back too much. And, the year he left, Arkansas made it to the SEC championship the year after Jones was gone. So I think it might be the best thing for A&M. Jimbo finally now has a quarterback that's been in his system for a little while. Mond wasn't his recruit, but he was the best quarterback that they had for so long. But, Jimbo has recruited really well out there. And I think part of why A&M is ranked high, it's bringing back, not bringing back a quarterback, but every other position on that team, just about, especially on the trenches. I mean, they're pretty loaded, and A&M's always, now that they're in the SEC and they're out recruiting Texas, it seems like they're always going to have the skilled guys and that the back 4, back 6 now in college football, since you play so much nickel and dime. I think it's just everything else that's part of that team other than the quarterback is why they're ranked high. And now if they get a quarterback that doesn't make silly mistakes and doesn't try to do too much, I think they're set. I don't think they're going to be Bama this year as far as, getting to Atlanta, but if you're second in the West, you're still really good. And I think part of it too is some of those programs in the West, you got Auburn. I don't think Mississippi State's going to be any good. I think Ole Miss will be another year where they're fun to watch, but they'll still go like 500 in the SEC maybe. Corral's pretty good, but he throws a ton of dumb interceptions that cost ball games. So I really think it is those two in the West. That Alabama Texas A&M game is going to be a really good one. But if it wasn't for Bama, everybody would be picking, I think, A&M to win the West this year.
I think a lot of people would be shocked to see that Auburn is not in the top 25 just because of the brand.
Auburn's in trouble.
But if you look at what Auburn's got coming back, I just think it's a huge crapshoot, and they no longer have Gus Malzahn to be able to get you the W's just off of schematic looks, right? Running him out of town, that's a bold move, Cotton, because I just don't know what's going to lay in store for them for the next couple of years. I'm not saying they can't rebuild it, but Auburn's going to be in a full rebuild. But it is shocking to see them not ranked, because they are one of those SEC brands you expect to be ranked. LSU, that's another team. There is so many questions with LSU this year. Do you see them as a team that can even contend for the West or even be in the conversation, or do you think they might be a doormat again this year?
I think they're another team that's either going to be like 4-4 or maybe 5-3 in conference, and 5-3 is not winning the West. That's probably good enough for third or fourth behind A&M and Bama. I think, Miles Brennan being hurt, I don't know how long he's going to be out. They really don't know either. I know he had successful surgery earlier this week, but to be honest, I thought that job was going to be Max Johnson's anyway. I thought he looked really good. I thought he looked really good. Obviously against Florida, he made all the throws against our, joke of a secondary. But
by the way, have you seen his father's dopey TikTok account?
I haven't, but Brad comes off, even when they interviewed him last year a few times when I heard him, Brad comes off as the dorky dad for sure.
I think a lot of it's tongue in cheek, but it's like incredible. It's cringeworthy. Not for me, who is a Florida State fan watching a Florida State guy. It's cringeworthy for, my God, can you imagine what his kid's thinking? You know what I mean? Because he does some goofy stuff where he's literally like, I'm trying to think of a character that you can compare him to, but he's like that not quite Ricky Bobby, but just coming out there with a lot of brash and kind of almost like the dude from Eastbound and Down. So you think it's kind of a put on, but you're not really sure if that's real personality. And he's done some impressive stuff, but at the same token, I don't know if it's like the Tom Brady videos where they've been altered. I'm pretty sure these things have been altered, but I don't know because it's not. He doesn't do things out of the realm of possibility. But you're also thinking, man, if you were that accurate, wouldn't you have been a much better NFL quarterback? But yeah, if you ever get a chance, if I see one pop up again, I'll send it.
Yeah, definitely do that. I do think though, LSU's in that 4-4, 5-3 range. Probably leaning towards 5-3, but I don't think they're an impact player on the national scene this year.
All right, the Florida Gators. They've got them ranked 12th. I feel like that's probably close to being right. I think they gave them the benefit of the doubt because of what Mullen's been able to do with quarterbacks. But the jury's still out with Emory Jones, so I wonder if it's a little high. But if he comes through, obviously his first big test is September 18th at home against Bama. Right. Where do you see Florida? We're going to do a Florida Gator Day here in the next couple of weeks. I don't need a breakdown or anything like that. Not expecting that from you, but
I mean, I've got it if you want it.
I know, but we need to hold on to that for
yeah
a couple of weeks from now when we're like, dude, really another preseason football game? Where do you see the Gators in the national picture? You see them at rank number 12th, just in front of USC and just behind the Cincinnati Bearcats. I mean, really, do they really think Cincinnati Bearcats would beat Florida on it? I mean, because this is supposed to be power rankings. This isn't even supposed to be
right.
Well, if where do I think they're going to finish because of their schedule? This is literally supposed to be power rankings. Where do you see Florida? Because 12th to me, you could argue that's a little too high. You could also argue that that's a little too low.
Yeah, I actually, when I watched this show and I DVR'd it and I ended up watching a decent amount of it live, but there was so much like fluff and other crap that they went with. I just said, screw it, and I'll watch it again. Let's fast forward through it. But going into the show, I thought they'd probably have Florida around 15th or so. So I didn't think 12 was just a hair high, but that's not too far. I think the biggest thing with this Florida team is, people focus on the quarterback, and that's obvious. But if this team stinks again, the offensive line, as far as run blocking, like they did last year, and you kind of had to change things up because you had Kyle Trask who could throw the ball all over the yard. But this team's going to have to be able to run the ball and not put Emory Jones in 3rd and 12 and 2nd and 9 and do that every drive. So if the offensive line is pretty good, they've got a chance to have a really good year. I keep thinking, though, Mullen's not the greatest recruiter, especially in the trenches. And we've got a lot of guys back. But my biggest fear, I think, with the program, and I like Mullen a lot, but I feel like this is like every year we're going to go into the season and say, you know what, this is a 9-3 team. If they catch a couple breaks, they can go 10-2. If they don't catch a couple breaks, they can go 8-4. And I feel like I'm kind of stuck in that like 9-3 realm for us this year too. Like you play Bama, you play Georgia, you go to LSU. The schedule is kind of normal other than Bama, but you're gonna beat one of the big boys this year. I think either Bama or Georgia. Like Florida's gonna beat one of those two teams maybe. But then they're going to drop a game like at Missouri or something dumb like South Carolina. So you trade off a big win for a loss that shouldn't happen, and that's how you end up at 9-3, I think. So that's about where I think Florida is, and I think they probably have Florida ranked right. There's a few teams in front of them. Cincinnati's one where it's like, if you put Cincinnati in a different league, they're not, coming into the season 11th, So there are a couple teams like that, but I think that's about the only one. Maybe Iowa. I'm still not necessarily that big of a believer in Iowa State. Looking at teams ahead of Florida, but yeah, I think Florida's
I actually think Iowa State's got a very good chance to not only win the Big 12 but sneak into the playoffs.
I'm all for it. Somebody new in the playoffs would be a little nice instead of Ohio State, Oklahoma, Georgia, whatever. But I do think Georgia's where they are for a reason. People keep focusing on JT Daniels, and that's the way it should be. If I was a Georgia fan, I'd be a little a little skeptical at receiver because they've had some injuries there and some transition, but they just need Daniels not to be like, below average. Like even if JT Daniels is just okay, they were so terrible at quarterback before they found him last year. Like that Florida Georgia game, if Georgia had a quarterback, they actually had a shot, but they missed so many wide open guys. And, we didn't have any problem leaving guys open last year. Georgia just couldn't find them. Like if JT Daniels is just okay, Georgia will win the East probably.
Their biggest problem with Georgia is they start the whole damn thing off against Clemson. And you could lose that game and be staring down the barrel of, well, we can't drop another one.
Right.
And if you look at their schedule, that's not good because, eventually, if nothing else, you're going to have to run into Alabama if you're going to win the SEC. So, and I don't know. See, now look, I could see Georgia losing 2 regular season games if one of them was Clemson, winning the SEC and still going into the playoffs. But man, that is a tough one. This reminds me of the stupid Bobby Bowden days at Florida State where they were like, first game of the season. All right, Dallas Cowboys, are they open? Let's play them. Wait, what? Can we get a cupcake in there to get our, just to get woken up?
Yeah. A lot of people were picking Clemson in that game for obvious reasons, but I think by the time game week comes around, I'll probably pick Georgia in that game. I think first game back without Trevor Lawrence, Clemson lost more than just Lawrence.
That's the Chick-fil-A kickoff game that's in Atlanta, right?
Either Atlanta or Charlotte, one of the two.
Okay, if it's in Charlotte, I say Clemson wins, but if it's in Atlanta, I think Georgia wins because I really think that's going to make a big deal as far as who ends up being, because I just pulled it up and there is no site on what I'm looking at. All I see is it's the 7:30 kickoff on ABC.
I just pulled it. Yeah, it's Charlotte.
It is Charlotte. All right, then I'll take Clemson because their backup quarterback actually played pretty damn good last year.
Yeah, he was good last year.
Clemson has lost a lot of players, but man, they're like Alabama. It's like as soon as you take one 5-star recruit out, you bring 2 more in. So plus I just figured Georgia's going to do Georgia things, and that's
the thing. Like sometime in the course of that game, Kirby's going to do something that he shouldn't, and does it cost the game or does it just backfire a little bit? Like as great as Kirby is as a recruiter and as lousy as Mullen is, not say lousy, as average as Mullen is as a recruiter, I kind of like Mullen a little bit better on game day than Kirby because he's less likely to do something dumb unless it comes to like time management. But you're right though. I mean, Dabo versus Kirby in that game, the sideline to sideline matchup's a big one in that one too.
That is like the game of the weekend. Of course, you've also got Alabama, Miami. That's going to be the mid-afternoon game, and then Georgia versus Clemson is the.
Well, you better throw some respect on Willie Taggart versus Dan Mullen week 1.
Oh well, that's true. Yeah.
The awesome part about that game is that's the exact same time as Clemson, Georgia. So that's exciting.
Well, that's good for Willie Taggart. That was very, very shrewd on his part. He's like, you know what? What's the best way for no one to actually see this damn thing? Florida State's going to play Notre Dame the following night. I'll be in Nashville this entire time this is going on, so I've got to figure out where the hell I'm going to be for all these games because we're also having to do the tourist thing too. So it's going to get a little hairy around 7:30 Eastern on Saturday night. Sunday, I've already told the wife, because we're supposed to be going up there essentially for my birthday was essentially the gig, but it's really just an excuse to go to Nashville. And I told her, I was like, you know what I want for my birthday? I want to be able to watch the Florida State Notre Dame game. If I might only want to watch the first half because it might get ugly, but I got to be somewhere I'm going to watch that. The Saturday games, I might have to be like in some honky tonk, like, squinting at a small screen in the background and try to keep an eye on the Georgia Clemson game. But some exciting games that, to start the season off, not counting what Florida is doing, but LSU, UCLA, that's interesting. At least it's on a national scale kind of thing.
Yep.
And so we'll go ahead and kind of switch gears here because we're going to run out of time. The PGA FedEx St. Jude Classic this thing used to be earlier in the year. Are you into this right now, or is this one of these ones that you're just kind of half-ass watching it?
I will be this weekend. I haven't yet. The Olympic golf was going on last night. I was watching that. USA is trying to sweep the gold medal for both men's golf and women's golf, and I forget her name. The American is up by I think 4 strokes, and so this is what they're going to do. And we'll get to the St. Jude real quick. But what they're doing is they're going to start round 4 today. There's some weather and obviously oppressive heat over there, but they're going to start round 4 as soon as they can, try and get it in. If they can't get everybody in, they're just going to go back to the round 3 scores and declare that the gold medal winner. So things are a little weird over in Japan. For FedEx, so this is a World Golf Challenge. So there's also another PGA Tour event that no one cares about called the Barracuda this weekend. But for the FedEx, I do like it. I'll watch it this weekend. Next year, they're moving this to round 1 of the FedEx Championships, which makes sense since FedEx is the title sponsor along with St. Jude. But yeah, it's a cool course. There've been some great winners here. Mickelson plays well here. Koepka plays well here. Billy Horschel plays well here. So it's usually a good tournament, a good champion. And this is, off the golf course, this is one of my favorites because St. Jude does some really great things. So it's one that kind of pulls at your heartstrings a little bit too. So, but yeah, it'll be fun in Memphis and even better next year when it becomes even more important.
It's also good for the event that DeChambeau is within a couple of strokes of the lead. He's a -5. English is leading at -8, and then of course Justin Thomas is 3 under. So you like having, the bigger names. Ian Poulter is just a couple of strokes back. I've always paid attention to this one. This is kind of like my minor league version of the TPC because I lived in Middle Tennessee for so long. This thing's played over in Memphis. It was always on when I lived in that area. So you just gradually became a fan of this particular tournament.
Yeah. And somehow Nashville has never, you would think Nashville would have a regular tour stop after all these years, and they don't. So really, it's only one.
Nashville for decades, it just, they get these grudges against things. And this is why it took 60 years for them to bring NASCAR back when Nashville was the original home of NASCAR. And then they got in this huge pissing match with NASCAR, and NASCAR said, to heck with it. We'll try it down here at this area called Daytona, Florida. And so, but Nashville, they were just infamous. They did it with country music. People don't know this, but like 100 years ago, right now, Nashville would have been fighting with country music, saying we don't want to be branded as being country music. We're the Athens of the South. There's still a part of Nashville where it's like old snobby money, and they have ridiculous ideas about everything. And one of the things is they don't want to be known for athletics, and it's just asinine. I mean, thankfully for them, Vanderbilt's held that tradition up. But what is your walk-off for the day?
I don't know if I have anything that tops that, but yeah, college football's here. I know the Gators start camp today, and I think FSU's probably either over the weekend or Monday or Tuesday. So a lot of other schools too. So yeah, it's here. We had the Hall of Fame game last night, which I watched about 3 minutes of, and that was about it. But yeah, things are full go. Training camp's going on for the NFL too. So things are.
Yeah, I listened more than I actually watched. I had it on, heard the volume, but I was watching stuff like baseball and the Olympics.
Yeah.
So I would hear them. In fact, at one point I heard Peyton Manning being interviewed, and he says, "Sorry, I'm over here talking over the action." And Joe Buck is, "It's August 5th. It doesn't matter." Exactly. Yeah. All right, brother. Well, we will see you next week. We'll be one step closer to the beginning of college football. I cannot wait.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. We'll see you next week.
Yes, sir.